The rooftop bar hummed with summer noise as Alex said, "I need to say this before I lose my nerve." My hands shook around a sweating glass. Ethan watched the skyline like it might answer for him. I said, "I love you, and I always have." His jaw went tight. The wind lifted napkins like white flags that no one waved. Ethan said, "Alex, you should sit." I refused, because standing felt like armor. He reached for my hand and missed. Claire stepped from the elevator, and her smile died when she saw me. Ethan said, "We were going to tell you tonight." The music turned hollow, like a shell. I felt the city lean away. Claire said, "I never meant to hurt you." The word never hit harder than always. I said, "So I was a ghost, and you watched me haunt myself." The evening lights came on, and I understood what darkness meant. I walked home, without seeing street names. Jordan called, and I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Jordan said, "Do I need to come get you?" I laughed like glass breaking. I said, "I confessed," and he handed me a stranger. Cars hissed through puddles from a stray sprinkler. Jordan said, "You are not a mistake." I wanted to believe that sentence had bones. The city looked brand new and cruel. I said, "I thought love was hard, not impossible." A bus roared by and carried my courage. Jordan said, "Come to the diner, sit with me, breathe." I pictured a booth that forgave spills. I said, "Okay, but I am bringing the wreckage." The night did not argue. The diner smelled like coffee and survival. Jordan slid into the booth and said, "Tell me everything, but only once." I did, and the words scalded on the way out. He listened like it mattered. I said, "He chose her before he heard me." Jordan said, "He heard you and chose anyway." That truth sat between us like a heavy cup. I traced a ring of water on the table. Jordan said, "Your love is not lesser because he could not carry it." I said, "Then why do I feel small?" Outside, a neon sign buzzed, stubborn as hope. Ethan texted, and my phone jumped like it feared him too. He wrote, "We should talk." Jordan said, "Do not chase the person who is walking away." I said, "I want answers, not crumbs." The screen lit my face like a warning. Ethan wrote, "I never wanted to hurt you." I said, "He keeps using never like it is a bandage." Jordan said, "It is a curtain." I pressed call and listened to it ring into silence. My heart knocked on my ribs for bail. The diner clock ticked, and every second said, "Choose you." I walked Jordan to the door, and the night felt lighter by a gram. Jordan said, "Sleep, even if it is brief." I said, "I will try to dream of doors that lock behind old pain." He hugged me like a friend who knew where the cracks were. The street hummed with distant laughter that did not sting. I turned toward home, and a breeze carried fryer smoke and rain. I said, "Tomorrow, I will count the pieces and choose the ones that still shine." Jordan said, "I will be here when you do." A traffic light changed, and I crossed. The morning came heavy, and the sunlight did not ask if I was ready. I sat at my desk with old photos spread like scars across the wood. Ethan's smile in one frame looked like it had been meant for me forever. My chest tightened at the thought. I said, maybe he was never mine, only borrowed from fate. The kettle whistled in the kitchen, but I did not move. My reflection in the glass window looked like someone I did not know. Claire's laugh echoed in my head as if it belonged to me once. I whispered, what was I missing that she wasn't? The walls offered no answer. My phone buzzed with a message from Jordan asking, "Breakfast?" I turned it face down. The silence was louder than words. I traced Ethan's face with one fingertip until the photo blurred. The memories cut like glass. I remembered Ethan on a rainy night holding my hand as thunder rolled. He said, "I will always keep you safe." I had believed him without a doubt. That memory felt cruel now, like it mocked me. I leaned back, closing my eyes until the past painted itself across my eyelids. Claire appeared in those thoughts too, her arm slipping around him in the present. The sharpness of betrayal stung worse because once he had sworn loyalty. I whispered, "Promises are just paper, water ruins them." A horn blared outside, breaking the haze. I stood and grabbed my coat, the walls of the apartment suddenly too small. At the cafe, Jordan was already waiting, coffee steaming between his hands like a peace offering. He waved me over and said, "You look like you didn't sleep." I sat across from him and laughed without humor. I said, "Sleep avoids me, just like he does." Jordan's face softened with patience. He said, "You keep bleeding for someone who handed the knife away." I flinched at the sharpness of truth. My cup stayed untouched. I said, "Do I forgive him or myself?" Jordan replied, "Start with yourself." His words slid into me like medicine I was too stubborn to swallow. Later that evening, a message blinked from Ethan. It said, "We need to clear the air." My throat closed. Jordan, reading my face, said, "Don't let him write your story twice." I said, "I don't know if I want closure or fire." The bone burned in my palm. I pictured Ethan's voice, soft but cutting, the way it always wrapped me around his choices. Claire's shadow stretched between us even without her name. I typed and erased again. Finally, I dropped the phone onto the couch. I whispered, "If he loved me, he would not need to explain." Jordan placed a hand on my shoulder and did not speak, which was louder than comfort. Night fell again, and I found myself at the riverside, city lights stretched across the black water. I said to the darkness, "If love is real, why does it feel like drowning?" A breeze carried the scent of wet stone. My heart pounded in rhythm with the current. I thought of Ethan's face, then Claire's, and then mine reflected in the water like a stranger's. Jordan's voice lingered from earlier, reminding me to forgive myself first. I closed my eyes, let the tears run, and whispered, "Tomorrow I will try to breathe without him." The city hummed, indifferent yet alive, and I understood that I was still here. The next day I saw Ethan outside the bookstore, his arm brushing Claire's like it belonged there. My stomach dropped like an anchor. He laughed, a sound I used to own. I froze, clutching a book I did not buy. He looked up and saw me. His face stilled, but he did not move toward me. Claire whispered something, and his lips curved, but not for me. I said under my breath, "This is what betrayal looks like alive." The street noise grew loud, muffling my pulse. I turned away before my knees gave in. In the reflection of the shop window, my eyes begged for answers I already knew. That night, my anger boiled into words I never thought I'd say. I met Ethan in the alley near the bar we once claimed as ours. I said, "How long were you lying?" He looked down, hands buried in pockets. He said, "It was not supposed to happen." I said, "But it did, while I was still here." His silence hit harder than any confession. The neon light buzzed above us like a broken witness. I stepped closer, my chest trembling. He whispered, "I wanted both, but life doesn't work that way." My heart cracked at the arrogance. I said, "You wanted choices, not love." His eyes finally met mine, and they were empty. As I left that alley, a voice called my name, and I turned to see Daniel, my ex, standing near the corner. He said, "I didn't expect to see you like this." My breath caught. He looked the same, yet older in sorrow. I said, "You're the last ghost I needed tonight." Daniel shrugged, his smile bitter. He said, "I heard about Ethan." I stiffened, the ache fresh again. He stepped closer but careful, as if I might shatter. He said, "You deserve more than men like us." I wanted to argue, but my throat burned. I whispered, "Then why did you leave me bleeding too?" His silence admitted more than words. Later I found Jordan waiting at the cafe again, his eyes scanning the street for me. I slid into the booth, trembling. He asked, "Did you see him again?" I nodded, unable to speak. He clenched his jaw, then softened. Jordan said, "He keeps taking pieces from you, and you keep letting him." My chest tightened at the truth. I whispered, "Because I don't know who I am without him." Jordan leaned closer and said, "You're Alex, and that's already enough." His voice cut through the storm inside me. For the first time, I let his words stay. Days later, the lie finally surfaced. A mutual friend sent me a message saying they were together long before you confessed. My stomach turned to stone. I whispered, so it wasn't weakness, it was betrayal all along. The truth felt heavier than the doubt. I walked to the bridge where the city hummed beneath me, clutching the phone like proof of my own blindness. The wind whipped my hair, but I didn't move. I said, he let me believe in a future that never existed. A tear fell into the river, swallowed instantly. The lights below blurred, as if the city itself cried with me. I sat in Jordan's car, watching the city rush past, when the suspicion hardened into certainty. My friend Mia had texted me a photo of Ethan and Claire at a party weeks before my confession. The date on the picture mocked me with its cold truth. I whispered, so they were already together when I was still dreaming. Jordan glanced at me, his knuckles tight on the wheel. He said, "Alex, you deserve to know, even if it burns." My chest collapsed inward. The lies weren't accidents, they were construction. Ethan had been building his life with her while letting me hold the scraps. The air felt too thin inside the car, but the truth was heavier than silence. The next day, I went to the cafe where Ethan always lingered after work. He was there, Claire by his side, their laughter sharp enough to cut. I stood at the counter, unseen, but rage burned louder than fear. I said under my breath, "They've turned me into the story's fool." Claire leaned in, whispering, and Ethan's hand brushed hers across the table. My nails dug into my palm until I felt pain anchor me. Finally, I walked toward them, my steps echoing across the tiled floor like a verdict. Ethan's smile died when he saw me, but it was too late. The betrayal was already exposed. The air shattered when I asked, "How long has this been happening?" Claire's lips parted, but Ethan answered first. He said, "Since before you confessed." The room tilted, my pulse roaring louder than voices. I said, "So you rehearsed betrayal every time you saw me?" Claire whispered, "We didn't mean for it to go this way." I laughed, sharp and broken. "You meant every step, you just didn't mean to get caught." Ethan's eyes dropped, shame flickering too late. I felt my knees threaten to give, but my fury kept me upright. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for me to break, but I would not. That night, Jordan demanded the truth from me as much as I demanded it from myself. We sat on his porch, the cicadas loud. He said, "Do you still want him after everything?" I pressed my forehead into my hands. I said, "I want the version that loved me, but he doesn't exist anymore." Jordan's voice cracked with anger, then stopped, searching for a ghost. His frustration was love disguised as fury. I said softly, "He was my anchor." Jordan replied, "Anchors drown too." His words pierced, raw but true. I lifted my face, meeting his eyes, and saw only care staring back. Later, alone in my room, I broke apart. The walls felt too close, the silence unbearable. I collapsed onto the bed, clutching my pillow like it might hold me back together. My breath came in ragged sobs until my throat burned. I whispered, "They stole the story I thought I was living." The betrayal was no longer rumor. It was blood under my skin. For the first time, I didn't imagine forgiving him. Instead, I imagined never hearing his voice again. That thought terrified me, but it also freed something small inside me. The night stretched long, and I let myself cry until the darkness swallowed sound. I agreed to meet Ethan one last time, not for closure but for clarity. We stood in the park where he once swore love under autumn leaves. Now the trees were bare, branches sharp like accusations. I said, "You owe me the truth without excuses." His shoulders slumped, and he said, "I loved you, but I loved her too." My chest burned at the selfishness. I said, "That's not love, that's hunger." He reached for me, but I stepped back. The wind cut through my coat, but the cold in his words was sharper. He whispered, I didn't want to lose either of you. I said, you lost me the moment you lied. His silence was the first honest thing he gave me. We argued until words became knives. I said, every kiss you gave her was stolen from me. Ethan shouted, I didn't plan this. My voice broke, but you chose it every single day. A couple passing by turned their heads, pity in their eyes. The sound of our fight echoed against the stone fountain, each word a fracture. Ethan said, I wanted to keep you both because I couldn't decide. I laughed bitterly. You don't keep people, Ethan, you love them or you let them go. His face twisted, the arrogance stripped to fear. I walked away before he could answer, my pulse pounding like war drums. Later that night, Claire called me. Her voice trembled as she said, I didn't steal him, he came willingly. I closed my eyes, the phone heavy in my hand. I said, then you should keep him because I won't. Her silence pressed like static. Then she whispered, I think he still loves you. My laugh cracked in two. I said, he loved the reflection of himself in me, not me. I ended the call before her guilt could leak further. The darkness of my room swallowed me, but this time I didn't cry. I stared at the ceiling and thought, maybe freedom feels like emptiness first. Daniel appeared again outside the bookstore days later, almost like fate's cruel reminder. He said, you look stronger now. I smirked bitterly. Stronger doesn't mean healed. He shifted uneasily, hands shoved into his jacket pockets. He said, I came to apologize, not to haunt you. I folded my arms. I said, you already taught me ghosts don't fade, they linger. His face twisted with regret. He whispered, if I had stayed, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I shook my head. Don't flatter yourself, Daniel. Ethan broke me on his own. His silence left me standing in the wreckage of two past loves. That night, I walked the city streets alone. The world loud with laughter I could not share. I passed couples holding hands, each grip a reminder of what I lost. I whispered to myself, maybe love is not about holding on, but surviving the letting go. My reflection in shop windows looked like someone braver than I felt. Jordan's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me that anchors drown. I let the thought settle like truth. My steps grew slower but steadier. For the first time, the idea of life without Ethan didn't feel like death. It felt like a door creaking open. The night air was sharp as I stood outside the bar where Ethan and Claire were rumored to be. My heart hammered like it was daring me to collapse. I whispered, this ends tonight. Inside, laughter spilled out, warm against the cold. I pushed the door open and found them at a table, their hands too close to be mistaken for friends. Ethan looked up, guilt flashing across his face, but Claire did not move her hand. I said, do you enjoy watching me bleed, or do you just not see it? The bar fell silent around us, and Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. I marched to their table, every step louder than the jukebox that suddenly cut to silence. Ethan rose, saying, Alex, not here. My voice cracked like lightning. If not here, then where? You burned me everywhere we stood. Claire shifted, her eyes darting, but she stayed close to him. I said, tell me you love her more, so I can bury you. Ethan's hand hovered as if to touch me but dropped. His silence was the verdict I had dreaded. The weight of it broke something inside me, but my voice still came, fierce and trembling. You already chose. The words clawed out of me, raw and unrestrained. I shouted, you let me love you while you gave yourself away. Ethan winced, whispering, I'm sorry. My laugh split the silence, jagged and bitter. I said, sorry is a thread that can't stitch skin. Claire whispered, Alex, he was never mine to steal. He came willingly. My chest heaved, and I whispered back, you can have what's left, because I refuse to carry him anymore. The bar crowd shifted uncomfortably, their faces mirrors of my humiliation. My tears blurred the room, but my voice still cut through. This is where I end us. I stormed out, the cold night wrapping me in its sharp embrace. Ethan followed me onto the street, his voice desperate. "Alex, wait," he called. I spun, shouting, "Wait for what? Another lie? Another betrayal dressed as love?" He stepped closer, face pale under the streetlight. I said, "You broke me, but you don't get to fix me." His lips trembled with words unsaid, but I held up a hand, stopping him. The city traffic hissed around us, headlights flashing like accusations. I whispered, "This is the last time you will hear my voice say your name." I walked away, my steps heavy but steady. Behind me, Ethan's voice broke into the night. "Alex, I loved you." I didn't stop. I whispered to myself, "Then love should have been enough." The city swallowed his voice, leaving only the sound of my heels against wet pavement. My heart cracked, but it also began to rebuild itself with every step. I felt the ache of loss and the spark of survival colliding inside me. By the time I turned the corner, I knew I would never be the same, but maybe I didn't need to be. The morning arrived with a cruel kind of brightness, sunlight spilling across the kitchen, as though mocking the hollow ache inside me. I sat at the table with a mug that had long gone cold. The steam vanished like promises left unkept. My fingers curled tightly around the ceramic, as if heat might return if I waited long enough. Outside, the city hummed, horns and footsteps carrying on without knowing my world had cracked. I whispered to the silence, "I don't know if I lost him, or if I finally found myself in the wreckage he left behind." The ache gnawed, but somewhere beneath it a faint current of clarity stirred. His name lingered on my lips, but I refused to speak it again, as though silence could finally bury him. My reflection in the window stared back, worn and frayed, yet within the cracks lived something new. Something that might one day resemble strength. By afternoon I met Jordan at the park, the bench worn from countless seasons of waiting. He greeted me with a small smile, his eyes heavy with worry yet softened by quiet pride. I sat beside him, the crisp air carrying the scent of fallen leaves, and for a moment, I just breathed. He said gently, "You look lighter, even if it hurts." My lips curved, though the ache had not left me. I said, "I feel empty, but maybe emptiness is the start of space." He chuckled quietly, nodding, "Space for what comes next." His words did not promise love, nor did they promise repair. They offered only survival, and for the first time that was enough. My chest loosened, the silence between us tender rather than heavy. I let my head rest back against the bench and felt the cool wind remind me I was still alive. The message came the next day. Ethan and Claire were no longer hiding. Their photos spread across social media, hand in hand as though betrayal was a celebration. The sting pierced deep, but it no longer hollowed me completely. I stared at the screen until the images blurred, then whispered, "Let them keep what was never mine to begin with." My chest ached but remained upright. I opened my phone and scrolled through Ethan's messages, every word once heavy with promises. One by one, I pressed delete, each tap like a door slamming shut in a long haunted house. The silence that followed wasn't punishment. It was peace, raw and unfamiliar, but real. My hands shook, not from longing but from release. The past still clung like shadows, but it no longer owned me. That evening, I walked to the river, the same place where grief had once broken me open. The water glimmered calmly now, city lights painting ripples across its surface like restless brushstrokes. I leaned against the railing, the cool metal grounding me, and let the wind whip strands of hair across my face. The ache remained, but it had softened into something almost bearable. I said quietly, "I will not drown in someone else's tide anymore." My words drifted with the breeze, disappearing into the hum of traffic and lapping water. I didn't need them returned to me. The scars inside me felt less like wounds and more like maps, jagged paths charting where I had walked and survived. I stood taller, breathing deeper, as though the air itself had been waiting for me to claim it again. Back home, the final act unfolded without ceremony. I pulled out the last photograph of Ethan, the one that once lived on my nightstand like a shrine. My hand trembled, but not from love. This was something heavier, necessary. I placed the photo in a drawer and closed it slowly, The sound sharp in the quiet room. My chest tightened, then loosened in the same breath. I whispered, "Goodbye." The word scratched my throat, tasting bitter yet essential, like medicine swallowed against my will. A single tear slipped down my cheek, but it did not bring despair. It carried release. I reached for the lamp and turned it off, plunging the room into soft darkness. For the first time, the silence did not ache with emptiness. It pulsed with freedom, fragile but alive, and I let it cradle me.